He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He's making a list. He's checking it twice. I forget the nursery rhyme,
He
but we're not
knows if
talking
you've been
about
bad or
Santa
good.
Claus. He does know if you've been bad or good, or if you've invested in his company, which I hope the reptile knows that I have, and therefore he won't kill me when he owns the world. But we're talking not about Santa Claus here. We're talking about the reptile, Peter Thiel, who owns Palantir, a company that's causing a lot of controversy in the zeitgeist, I would say. Personally, as usual, I'm a fan of who everyone thinks might be the Antichrist, who he himself proclaims himself to be a fan of the Antichrist. Um, I wouldn't say I'm a fan of him personally, but what he's doing for the world, I think, is for the benefit. I'm a big fan of Palantir. I'm a big fan of his business partner, Alex Karp. I'm sure, Nick, you probably disagree with that one, but overall, I think it's a great company. What do you think about Palantir, the all-seeing eye?
Yeah, I can't really get how again, I think we talked about this last week, how you can say like, oh, like China's like a surveillance state, and now you can cheer on the reptile here to lead us all in the correct direction. Um they apparently South Park did like an episode on Peter Thiel. I haven't seen this one. I haven't seen a few of the new ones, like the last like four or five. But they have a song in there. It's like Peter Thiel knows about the Antichrist. Ask him a question about the Antichrist. It's it's is it him taking such a academic interest in the Antichrist not like not a huge red flag? Like is that almost not worse than like saying I think Hitler was cool like Nick Fuentes does we talked about on last episode?
It was a bit of a turnoff for me when he first came out and he was fully embracing his love for the Antichrist. But the more I think about it, the more I'm understanding that he is not worried about what other people think. He is a man of business and a man of interest, and his interest is just so happens to be the Antichrist. And who am I? Who am I to judge? You know.
Yeah, I guess. But why why would you say you're a fan of what he's doing then?
Well, so okay, so in a more serious note, by the way, Christmas special, everybody. Cheers to that. I was going to drink some eggnog, but I didn't have any, so I'm drinking high noons. But why I'm a fan of the company is actually it's because I think it is portrayed in the media and the public is a much different thing than it actually is. I think what it actually is, it's a company that specializes in ontologies. And what this means is that, you know, they name it after the all-seeing eye from Lord of the Rings, which is uh, obviously intentional, but probably not the most generous of names. I don't know exactly why they did that. Not the best for public relations, but what they actually do is they provide a software that is able to access different pools of data without actually revealing what that data is to the human eye. And because of the way it's designed, it's very difficult to abuse. There's no so prior to what Palantir does, it was basically, a human analyzing all of the data and, they can make some software or however they want to do it, but trying to put it together and pick targets. And so what happens is we end up accidentally killing a lot of civilians and we maybe get the wrong guy here and there where I think at the end of the day, what Palantir really is it's a it's a math-based company. And it's, if you think that the company Palantir is immoral, then you must just think math is immoral because all it is really doing is just taking a computer based approach using math to try to determine who the actual targets of our military are. And when it comes to domestic reasons that it's used, it's for domestic security or even for business purposes. And obviously, there's a little bit of controversy when it comes to what are we targeting consumers now, but let's be honest, we've been doing that for a long time, but we've just been targeting the wrong consumers. Imagine if every single ad you ever saw was something you actually wanted, then you'd pay attention to the ads. Palantir is making a world where we will pay attention to the ads because they're so good at knowing us. They know us better than ourselves that it makes it so that they're actually going to give us ads that we for something that we actually like. But when I say they, this is the most important part. There is not a person. That's the big deal. Is that this is all encrypted, and there's no way for even Peter Thiel or Alex Karp themselves to access this data. It's encrypted. It's designed. It's part of the system. It's transparent, so they can't actually see Nick Camholes did this. What they can see is this pattern aligns with this pattern, and therefore this pattern should be how we respond. And they have no idea who these people are. It's all anonymous. It's nothing. And so for that reason, it's very hard to abuse, and I think that's good.
Do you believe that? I find it hard to believe that it's this sort of ambivalent thing of like, well, I can't use this to my own good. Like, how would I ever be able to use the all-seeing eye for my own good? It just is what it is. Sort of, is that not like an ultimate cop out?
Well, no, but that's the genius of the technology. That's why it's so valuable when it comes to their stock valuation. I mean, they're being traded at prices that are well over what they should be. It's all speculative, of course, but that is what it is that's the technology they came up with. The technology is not we are able to find targets. We've been able to find targets forever. The problem was that they were always often the wrong ones, or that it was a human who could abuse that system and target a fellow human who they don't like for whatever reason. Now it's no longer humans targeting, it's now machines targeting, and machines don't have the bias and the emotions that we have. Those are flaws in humans. And so it's basically that their technology is allowing a machine to determine whether or not it is okay to drone strike this location. And that machine is based on metrics that are transparent and everyone can see. And if the machine says you can, not to say the machine's always going to be right, but humans aren't always going to be right. Humans are going to be wrong more often than the machine. And so for that purpose, I think it is good. And I think if we don't do it, I think we're almost obligated to do it because, you mentioned China. I mean, China's obviously doing it. And so any other geopolitical rival that comes up will obviously be doing it. And so we need to do it, and we need to do it in a way that doesn't infringe upon our civil liberties. And I think that as of now, at least, Palantir seems to be doing a good job of that, from what I know. And I'm not an expert. I'm a former partial owner. I owned about 0.00001% for about 6 months, and I plan on trying to buy back that 0.0001% when I get a good chance. But based on my research, I think it is a value more so than a cost to us as people and to our country.
Does this sort of technology not lead to some form of like a globalist authoritarian control system?
It likely does. It likely does. But I think that that gets to a even deeper question, which is that avoidable in any way at all? Even if we were to decide, okay, we don't like Palantir, we don't want the globalist authority.
Is the world going the way towards nationalism or globalism? It has to be globalism.
I think in the short term we might see a nationalism spike, but in the long term, yeah, it's definitely going towards globalism in the long term, and I think technology leads that way. I mean, look how more connected we are with each other compared to where we were even 20 years ago. I mean, we talked about how a lot of these technologies are, when they're communication technologies or information technologies, their job is to connect people. I mean, if you look at Facebook, I can be Facebook friends with someone in a different country, and I can talk to them constantly all day, every day if I want to. That's something that never would have existed prior to 2007. As recent as this last year, I mean, we're seeing the translation. Google and all these AI companies are breaking the language barrier. So now, like, I got in an Uber a couple weeks ago, and he didn't speak English, and he was trying to tell me something, and I didn't understand what he was saying. And he just typed it into his phone, had it translated to English, showed me, I understood, and then I typed in what I was saying back, and you're able to talk that way. And even that is a little bit obsolete at this point because they now have the technology where that could happen in real time if you're like on the phone with somebody or something like that. So I think overall, yes, we're becoming a global community, and that global authoritarian state is very scary, and I'm very opposed to it. I agree. But my question then becomes, can we avoid it at all? And I think the answer is no. And I think if the answer is no, then the ideal would be for it to be ran by an American company with American values rather than a country or company who doesn't respect free speech and liberties and all that type of thing.
I mean, at a certain point, it doesn't even become American values, right? Does this software have American values?
Oh, and by
encoded
American
into it?
values, yes, it does. And by American values, I just mean a value of liberty and individualism over authoritarianism in a way. Not to say it's not authoritarian, it kind of is, but just the human rights that are ingrained in our Constitution should be ingrained in the technology that becomes the global authoritarian tyrant.
Bit of an oxymoron.
It is, but it either goes one way or the other. It's either we have a government that's ran by the people, which is what the American government was designed to do, or we have an or we have a global government that's designed as a weapon to exploit and suppress the people, which I think, depending on who ends up controlling this weapon, it could go that way too, which is that's a very scary thing. I think that the American uh, kind of like individual free market ideal is the better one. But that's just me, and there's it could go either way on that. But that's why I like it. I think that that is kind of ingrained. I think it's coded into the software.
So if they can code that into the software, they can code fucking anything into the software, right?
Yes, exactly. And the fact that they chose that is why I like it.
But that, going back to my first question, I think I threw at you was like, it's hard for me to believe this is a purely benevolent software system that the data is the data, the math is the math. Now you're saying you can encode into it whatever values you want. Why
Well,
can't
you
you
can,
encode
but
anything
it's
into it to then target an exact like demographic of people you're trying to?
well because good question, because it's transparent. So I can see anyone who can understand the coding language can see what's coded into it. And so if they were to change the code, then everyone would be able to see that, and it would lose a lot of its value. That's where its value is. Its value is in the fact that its code is transparent and that its code aligns with the values that, I mean, a lot of people think are good, especially when it comes to like a company as powerful as that. But if they were to change it, then that would be open for everyone to see, and they would probably there's no I'll put it this way, there's no incentive for them to change it. If they were to change it, they'd lose a lot of their value.
Their that's their value proposition is transparency in surveillance.
Yes.
That's interesting.
It's kind of it's not on a blockchain,
I was
but
gonna
it's
say
very
I was
similar
gonna say
concept.
I was literally gonna say it's like the blockchain. What blockchain is to currency, this is to surveillance slash almost governance in a way.
Yes, that's the way I would. That's a great way to put it. I would put it that way. And they're not on a blockchain technically yet, but I think that they should be. And if they don't do it, someone else will, and whoever does will take their spot. So they're incentivized to do that.
And I mean, I'm sure you probably don't know the answer to this question. It's just a question: is they say it is transparent. Like, how do you know it's fully transparent, right? It's like, oh, here's the transparent portion, and then here's the reptile antichrist portion of it that people can't
Yeah,
see.
I mean, fair. It's possible that it's deceptive. It's possible, but I have not seen any evidence that it is. And if it were to be, then it would be highly illegal to the like a major problem where it would not be allowed to be traded publicly, or it wouldn't be able to operate, just because it'd be in violation of the law. A good analogy I saw about it would be like, imagine you have like a door-to-door doctor, and a doctor is not allowed to violate the HIPAA regulations, right? So if you're going door to door, you can go into other people's houses and you can take down their information. And while you're taking down their information, you can kind of look inside their house and see their house. And if you were to go back to your company and your company were to say, hey, give us all the information about their medical records and also what's in their house, then you, for one, shouldn't do that because it's illegal. The company will go down. That would be illegal. Basically, what Palantir is doing is they're automating that doctor. So that doctor is not a person; it's a software. And so, yes, the company could hypothetically ask this. Obviously, the company owns the software, so they could go into it and see what's going on, but it would be illegal for them to do so. And so,
Oh, that's a big issue.
I
The
get what you mean. Yes, I get what you
uh,
mean. but that's why I say that it should be on a blockchain. If they were really about transparency, they'd put it on a blockchain, and if they don't, then someone else will. But just all personal stuff aside, take the reptile out of it, take the government out of it, everything. It is an amazing technology, and they advertise themselves as a company that recognizes that this technology should be used for good. It seems like they are. I have no reason to think that they aren't. If they aren't, there is an also good technology that is able to stop that as well, which is the blockchain. Which, if they're, I think that within the next few years, you will see the same technology on a blockchain, and that way there is no. That's a whole different thing. There's no,
Then
there's no cheat in the system.
it's on the ledger, right? For
And then it's on the ledger. Then I can look at it. You can look at it. Anybody can look at it.
yeah. I had one other thing I was thinking about earlier was we were talking about like communicating across the globe now, essentially, how it's gotten so much easier. And that has to lead more towards some sort of like global society rather than a nationalistic society. There's something, is it, I don't think it's the Great Red Firewall. Is it just like the Great Firewall? Is that what China has?
Yeah, yeah, the Great Firewall. Yeah.
The Great Firewall or something. So they have that up and they're trying to like keep their citizens like sequestered, essentially, is part of the idea behind it, right? It's certainly to keep the flow of information from them, right? Like you Google Tiananmen Square here, you get much different results than when you search Tiananmen Square in China. That's their idea behind it. Did you see much about I think when Elon took over Twitter, uh fucking liberals were leaving there and they were downloading Redbook. Do you see anything about that?
Um. So so I know. So Blue Sky is like kind of like the left wing alternative to
Blue,
Twitter now, right?
Blue Sky is just fucking Truth Social,
It's
right?
yeah, yeah. It's True Social, and
Yeah.
then so Redbook was
Redbook
that.
is a Chinese.
That's TikTok. Is that not TikTok? Like the
No,
Chinese Tik? No. Okay.
no. TikTok is TikTok is the American version of ByteDance.
Okay.
ByteDance is I don't even know if it's is it I think it is Chinese. Yeah, it is Chinese. That's which is their version of the app, much different than our app. It has, like mostly like science and innovation and things like that on there, as opposed to ours is more just absolute nonsense. People doing prank videos and crazy shit like that. But Redbook is like their Twitter, more like. But
Okay.
people were hopping on, leaving that, going on Redbook, and that was like one of the first times where there were just a mass exchange of information directly between like Chinese citizens and American citizens. So things like that, I think, are inevitable to come in the future, even more than what they are now. And I can't see how that doesn't lead towards a more global society in that aspect as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think it does. I think all those examples. I mean, yeah, TikTok owned by the CCP. Obviously there's been some updates on that recently, but same thing with all of these things where like these are global technologies. I believe there's 4 billion people or something like that who have Facebook accounts. So that's more than just the United States. It's more than just the Americas. That's the entire world. And so and we know this, that these tech giants have more power than governments do. And it almost seems like we're shifting in a way. I mean, it's hard to say because we've never seen this in history before, but it's like it's almost our culture and our say nation or ideologies or whatever. It's no longer bound geographically in the way that it used to be, where we used to have the idea of. I mean, we still do, but the idea of like a nation state itself is what's deteriorating because now you've got somebody who might agree with me who's in China, and then someone else who agrees with us who's in Korea, and someone else who agrees with us who's in Germany, and then someone who has the absolute opposite ideology who is our neighbor. So it's no longer like a geographically bound kind of tension. It used to be like North versus South or whatever. And now it's like more ideological based, which is a global thing where geography no longer matters.
Yeah, it's also crazy. I was just thinking about this when you were saying that. Think about these like online circles that even like just in America, right? Like we were talking about Nick Fuentes last episode with his groypers, right? Think about how crazy it is in like the modern age we live in, where you can feel so much closer and more connected with this group of people you have never met than with like most of the people you see in your everyday day-to-day life.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. And I think the language barrier being broken down by I think is a bigger deal than people have let on because it even opens that door even more. And so
Yeah.
those groups, there might have been two of those same groups who believed the same thing, but one of them spoke this language, one of them spoke this language, and now those are combining as well. So it's definitely a convergent uh, phenomenon rather than a divergent one, where you see a little bit of both throughout history, depending on what the technology is. Some cause societies to converge into bigger societies, others cause them to fracture into smaller ones. I think we're seeing it's a kind of a weird one because we're seeing a little divergence, we're seeing a little convergence,
Wait,
and none of it's geographical based, which is the weird part, I guess.
it's also it's I think it is still geographically based to a certain aspect. I mean, we're seeing the rise of nationalism in a lot of countries. Obviously, you're seeing it in America, but Europe as well. There's far more like nationalist movements happening. I know it's happening in like Italy. I think Britain, even Germany. But that's why like people starting to freak out. It's like, oh, Germany's starting another nationalist movement up. But that's kind of thing you're seeing across at least Western countries. I'm not really as tapped into, what's happening in like Eastern countries as much, but it's again
Yeah, yeah.
at the same time you're also seeing people across the country, across the world, starting to talk more and more. I don't know.
No, that is a good point, actually. There definitely seems to be a geographical aspect to it. Now that I think about it, and like you said, but that phenomenon is, I believe, pretty much global. I do think that in the East there are some similar phenomena going on where obviously they have a much different worldview than we do, different culture, all this, but there is kind of this polarity that's developing in almost all countries, and I think it's simply a result of the technology where tribalism kind of rules the day when it comes to our subconscious instincts. And so when most people online are on there for leisure and they're just going to kind of click on whatever gets their attention, well, the way to get their attention is to have an enemy. And you know what gets the most attention is when your enemy could be anywhere around you. It's this shadow group of these woke libs or this MAGA Republicans. And so that phenomenon seems to be happening, like you said, in all of these different countries, and maybe all of the debates are different based on geography, whatever the issue of the country is. But that phenomenon of that separation and polarity does seem to be like the common thread throughout all of it, at least as far as I know.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. I got I kind of I just wrote something down. Do you have anything else there? This is a slight shift, but kind of still on topic.
No, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. I was thinking about this earlier at work, and I was just laughing. It makes no sense. We're talking about Palantir's value proposition, right? It's decentralized, transparent information. Almost surveillance systems, which is still hilarious. What is the value proposition of, say, like Chat GPT? Maybe not Chat GPT, but like, what is like a AI's value proposition right now?
Well, I think there's a ton of this is a good one because I've been seeing a lot of people. Are you kind of proposing the anti AI stance, whereas like we think it's overhyped, we don't think there's any actual value there other than generating videos and pictures and stuff like that?
That's
because
where it's building towards a little bit. Yes. So what do you
okay.
have?
So yeah, so I've been seeing this one a lot, and I would counter this one pretty hard because I think we're missing that's missing a big part of it. It's similar, I would say, to when social media came out and it was like, oh, this is great. We can look at pictures of cat, or even better example, when YouTube came out and it was like, oh, this is great. We can watch YouTube videos of cats. And it was like, okay, that was what it was being used for at the time. Another good
Right.
analogy is NFTs, where like NFTs still haven't really come back. They will, because NFTs are actually built on a very important, significant technology, which is digital ownership. But what were they used for originally? Was to make goofy
Like the
pictures and try to make it a
the
get rich quick scheme.
the gorillas and shit, right? Like, oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
own
the
I own this
apes or
like
whatever.
apes. Yeah.
So we're in the ape phase, and so let me go on a little bit of a tangent here. I don't mean to do the weave too much, but I want to say two important things. One of them's a story, one of them's a fact. So I'll start with the story. So I've talked about it on the podcast before. I'm a big fan of Johannes Gutenberg and his invention of the printing press because I love this point of history because I think we're in a similar time. Gutenberg invents the printing press. Now, this is the first time ever that all of a sudden we've opened up this many to many communication network where anyone can get something printed and anyone can buy however many copies of this printed thing that they want. Prior to this, scribes, if you wanted to make a copy of your book, you'd have to hire someone to rewrite your entire book page for page. Now I've got the printing press, so I can make 100, 1,000, 10,000 copies, is as many as I want to make. And so this is obviously a fundamental, significant milestone in human history. It's one of, if not the best, the most important milestone that we've had as far as technology. And this led to the Enlightenment, it led to the scientific revolution, it led to the industrial age. Prior to any of those things happened, there was an era of war and revolution and chaos. Why? Because no longer could the government or could this centralized organization control the narrative. All of a sudden, you had all of these different ideologies battling, right? And so the point I'm getting to here is that after the printing press was invented, within the next, and at the time things moved slower, so it was the next couple decades. Copernicus, if Copernicus, right? He's the guy that discovered one of the most significant milestones in scientific history, which is that the Earth revolves around the sun. Prior to Copernicus, we thought that the sun revolves around the Earth because that's what it looks like. It rises in the rises in the east, sets in the west.
Yeah.
So we would think that the sun moved around the Earth. Copernicus discovers and proves mathematically that that's not true. That the Earth actually revolves around the sun, and he does this after the printing press is invented. And so, great, I can make as many copies of this paper as I want to, and I can have them all printed for pretty cheap, and I can make sure I disseminate this information to everybody who would possibly be interested so that the whole world knows that the sun does not revolve around the Earth revolves around the sun. He sold 77 copies, I believe. I might be botching that number a little bit, but it was less than 100 copies of his paper that detailed exactly how he knows that the Earth revolves around the sun does not revolve around the Earth. He sold less than 100 copies. At the same time, the bestseller for 13 years in a row, and they had like 7 or 8 sequels, was a how-to manual. Is this the how-to manual? I don't know the name, but it was a how-to manual on how to hunt and identify and eradicate witches from your community.
The Malleus Maleficarum, the witch's hammer.
Right. The witch. Okay, there you go. Exactly. Yeah, the witch's hammer. And so my point of bringing up that story, I love that story. It's one of my favorites. My point of bringing that up is that we are in the era of the witch's hammer. We are in the era where the value of AI and even social media is not being fully appreciated yet because most people's idea of AI is the generative video of something crazy happening or something. They're not realizing what's actually under the hood. They're not seeing under the hood. What's under the hood is the cures for all of the deadly diseases that have plagued us for all of human history. They're already talking about reaching in the age of longevity, whereas we will be able to live as long as we want because we will have cured old age.
I've seen this.
Things like this.
That's about like your telomeres break down. Is aging is essentially your telomeres breaking down. Your telomeres are the caps of your DNA. They would keep your DNA in there. Every time your DNA replicates itself, it does it a little bit worse every single time because your telomeres decay a little bit every single time. I've seen scientific papers on this actually. Like, I think they're doing it already. They were able to like essentially stop animals from aging in that aspect because if your telomeres don't break down, well, then it can infinitely repeat itself, basically.
Exactly. And same with any like diseases, cure for cancer, cure for Alzheimer's, cure for diabetes, all of these things that have been destroying humanity forever. They're working on the cure for those. If you look at the genome, all it is code. But the problem is that as humans, I mean, these are trillions and trillions of different, sequences of code. We can't get through all that on our own. As humans, you can get all the humans in the world. It would take decades to do that, but AI can do that much quicker. We also have education is another one, whereas we can now use this for educational purposes where we might be able to get rid of the traditional college or get rid of even some of the crazy ideas I've come up with on this podcast about what the future of college might be. We have no idea because we might have an AI system that's able to teach people and train people to do things that prior another teacher was never able to do. This is all like under the hood stuff. Now, why are we all sensationalizing over generative images and videos? Well, because that's step one. And what is AI? At the end of the day, what is the technology underlying it? AI is machine learning. It's deep learning. It's literally that, machine learning. It's the machine learns. And so what is it doing? It's taking all of us dummies who type in a bunch of shit and say to generate this picture, and it's taking in that data. That data is all being kind of accumulated, harvested, and used to train the AI to eventually be able to do the things that are going to be life-changing and are going to be actually like extremely valuable to humanity. That's at least the pro AI argument.
No. I get that aspect of it, right? We talk about AI probably more than anything else on this show, if I had to guess. The AI value proposition kind of the underlying question behind it is, how does it not lead towards mass layoffs, essentially, right? Like, is it not like a technology that if it either is going to do what we hope it does, which is possibly everything, right? Or it's not going to reach that God moment. It's not going to, we're not going to reach a singularity. We somehow we can't break over that threshold of it becoming much, much, much smarter than it currently is, which we would need it to be. So it either doesn't work and the value proposition is way off, or it does work, and then what? Essentially, like, how do you? I don't know, right? Like, how does? How does it not,
think
how does it not?
I would.
What's the point of having most careers at that point?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that we do. I think that honestly, if and we've talked about socialism versus capitalism and Marxism and all this.
And I was gonna
I
say,
think that,
how is AI compatible with capitalism? Was gonna be like a corollary question.
well, I would think that it's a step towards the Marxist utopia that he talked about. I mean, I think we've talked about this before in the podcast, so I don't want to reiterate it too hard, but I think we discussed before that in Marx's actual teaching, he wasn't necessarily saying like I think he would have been opposed to a lot of what Lenin did and what a lot of these revolutionaries did because he wasn't really much of a revolutionary.
Yeah,
He was a what would you call it, like a philosophist about what is going to happen. He wasn't saying this is what we need to make happen. He was saying this is the obvious end result of what's going to happen is that we're going to reach this area of abundance where technology is going to get so good that humans will be useless. And at that point, there will be a natural transition into something like communism, like a communist utopia. Now, I don't know that that's going to be the thing, but I would say that it is definitely, it's just, the ironic part to me is that it's all of the Marx fans who hate AI, which seems ridiculous because it's like, that's what he was talking about. It seems like that's what he was talking about. Not to say that we're definitely going to get there, but the AGI or the thing that everyone's fearing, it's like, that's the thing.
Like having machines do all of like the farming that we need, do it much more incredibly efficiently and like production wise way better than what we're probably currently doing. Having that automated machines to like pick all that automated, you walk into like the healthcare facility, it fucking scans you. It's like, oh, you have this one little abscess growing, and that aspect, that's what it sounds like it's building towards if it works, right?
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, everyone talks about jobs and all this stuff, like, oh, what happens when there's no more jobs? And I mean, the idea is like the reason we do jobs is because they need to get done. It's not like everyone's jumping to do a job because they think it's fun. The reason we do jobs is because it needs to get done. Now, when it comes to like the inequality, is it going to be, well, there's a handful of people that own the AI and everyone else is out of luck? There's the problem right there. But in that case, the entire system would have to be reformed without a doubt. And I think even the intelligent Republicans would say the same thing. And I'm the biggest pro-capitalism guy you've ever seen. If we get to a point where humans are largely useless compared to the machines, then there obviously needs to be a new system because the entire purpose of the system was to incentivize humans to maximize their usefulness in return for a maximum reward. That's the whole thing. And so
Our
I
j-
don't think that becomes an issue. I think that's a solution, actually. I think people can work way less, for the same amount
our
of
jobs at
reward.
this point, more so, not that the work needs to be done. There is a lot of work that needs to be done. Our jobs more so about just like control than anything at this point.
I don't know about control. Well, I guess elaborate. What do you mean on that?
Is it not just is the current system not being held up essentially by the elite to keep the rest of us in line in aspect and not trying to go towards this sort of jobless communist utopia?
So you're saying kind of like the elite don't want a revolt or anything, and so they got to keep us busy, and so they're better off
Yes.
paying us to do something that's nonsense rather
Yes.
than saving that money for themselves.
Yeah.
I could definitely see that a little bit. Um, I mean, I think probably most specifically when it comes to like government jobs,
white
just because
white
I mean,
white collar jobs in general, like me and you have talked about like accountants, right? Like how do you need this many accountants? That
no,
doesn't
I
really make
mean those will
sense.
probably be the first to go. Those will
That
probably
doesn't
be the
really
first
make
to
sense
go.
anymore, does it? That doesn't.
No, I mean that is kind of I think maybe part of the division. I mean it's a good point. That might be part of the division is that, and as someone on the Republican side, I can kind of see this in myself a little bit, even though I'm a big tech guy as well. A little bit of contradiction, but like the system itself is changing due to the technology. I'm a big advocate of this. I understand that the technology drives the change in the landscape, and so maybe that the fact that that system has to change, it can change in one way or the other. If we were to look at it and say in 10 years, most of the jobs, say 50% or more of the jobs that humans currently occupy will be done by AI, and there will be no replacements. That's a big deal too, is because people have said this about the computer. They've said, well, the computer's going to take all of our jobs, and it turns out it's like, no, well, they still need someone to operate the computer, and even more jobs are created. Now people have their entire businesses online on social media, and so there's that possibility too. There's a possibility that even more human jobs are created now because of whatever the new future is. But if we were to assume that AI takes the jobs and there's no replacements, which is a possibility, well, then I do think that there needs to be a reform in the sense of what you're saying, which is that why are we having people show up to work and do things and spending our own money? Say I'm a company owner, I'm spending my own money to have a human show up to work and do this thing day after day when I could have a machine do it for 1/100th of the price. But now I'm just going to keep having this human do it just to kind of waste their whole life. Like that doesn't make any sense. And I do see what you mean. I think we might be getting there a little bit,
Yeah.
which kind of a good point. I didn't really think too much about that before. I guess I mean what do you think on that?
Again, it all lies in the question is AI going to reach that spot wherein it is so much smarter than us? Because right now, when you ask AI something, most of the time it's like correct and it gives you thought out responses. But then I've seen something, it's like it's pretty good at general things. But then once you start going into like really detailed things, like subjects you know a lot about, you'll actually start finding it wrong in a lot of aspects, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's as of right now, it's really good at like broad strokes, but we need it to get really good at the fine strokes more so. If it does reach that point, again, I can't see how the job of accountant is a job. In 15, 20 years, I can't see how if a I can't see how if AI keeps getting better and it does reach that stage, how is it not an infinitely better driver than a human being is? A human being who can be tired, a human being who can be pissed off, who
Who
can
needs to sleep and eat
right,
and
who
yeah.
needs to eat, who needs to take breaks, who cannot instantaneously communicate with every other vehicle on the road in in their head versus a software that can instantaneously communicate with everything at the same time. How is the job of driver a thing if AI can reach that point, right? And isn't driver the number one job in the US?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's number one, but I know it's big, and I've been looking into this because I think that that one, I said accounting will be the first one to go. It'll be up there, but driver will be, if not the first, it'll be in the top couple for sure. But going back to what you said about the AGI, you kind of made, you kind of alluded to the AGI, which is like, when we asked the LLM, the chatbot about kind of broad general things, they're good, but then we get into specific stuff, it starts to lose it. This is a thing, and it's kind of come up in these tech circles a little bit recently, and it makes a lot of sense to me that originally when AI was designed, it was the idea of AGI, artificial general intelligence, something that knows everything, and it's one model, and that's why right there is why so much money has been invested into these NVIDIAs and OpenAIs because they're going for this AGI. Now it's come up in a little bit of kind of like fringe tech circles to say, wait a minute, because that's a conversion trend, right? If you've got a bunch of different chatbots now, and eventually one's going to win, right? And that's usually the way it goes in tech.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook won, Google won. They're saying, wait a minute, this technology specifically has some features, and I've read a little bit, and it makes a lot of sense, which is these features actually don't align with a conversion technology. They kind of more align with a divergent technology where you won't have one AGI, you'll have the medical AI,
I
and
was
then you'll
I
have
was
the
just thinking
lawyer AI,
it's
and
going to
you'll
be
have the
special.
engineer.
It's going to be completely specialized, right? Instead of
I
asking it
think
to
that
know
might be
everything about everything, it's like, all right, just focus on the law, and then it would be able to completely dive into every single aspect of the law, right? But it doesn't have to know how to drive a car.
yeah, I think that might be the way it goes because it also makes sense from an economic sense because the margin of return grows linearly with every new cluster that you add to the to the matrix. Meanwhile, the cost grows exponentially. And
Okay.
so eventually you get to that point where the cost starts out. If you want to make this thing even smarter, it's going to cost you more than you're going to get back. And, eventually it starts to not make sense anymore. And I think they're hitting that. That might be the cause of the AI bubble that's coming either way. But I'm starting to get on that train where I think it makes more sense to have divergent technologies where you might have a construction AI and a medical AI and whatever. You might have an AI that's really super knowledgeable about the Harry Potter cinematic universe or something.
Yeah.
You might have all of
Because
these different
even this,
things.
that sounds much more democratic. That sounds much more decentralized rather than, all right, here's the God AI that knows everything about everything. You have to trust it. It
Hmm.
has to be right. Versus you have a lawyer AI, right? And your lawyer AI is really good. But actually, I'm a competing lawyer law firm. I kind of noticed that your lawyer AI is not very good at, I don't fucking know, like permitting laws, right? So then you can make your own AI that's actually better than it. So then there's competition as well, right? So you can have competing versions of these AI agents essentially, rather than having one unified system that knows and does everything that's probably owned by one guy. Now, if it is divergent, if it's across a lot of different sectors, then you can have competition within each sector.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think that that's a better way I mean, both morally and logically, it seems to make sense. I think it's logically the way the things go, and I'm a fan of it morally because I think that that's a better way for it to go. I did also, I mean, I've been seeing a lot of, different takes on this. One thing that I like, here a quote that I think sums it up pretty good is in the age of AI, and this for anyone watching too, because you're going to see a lot. You're seeing it already on social media. You're seeing a lot of anti-AI sentiment. Don't do it. It's killing the climate. Okay, that's not true. It's all this a lot of nonsense that's not true. Here's the thing. What AI does is it enables the curious mind and it disables the person who thinks that they know everything. You know, and everyone knows these people who, and I've been it myself probably, where it's like, oh yeah, I know all about this, I can tell you all about this. And now, if everyone has AI in their pocket or eventually on their eyes or whatever, now nobody wants the guy that knows everything or that thinks he knows everything because we've already got that. It's on our eyes. The person who's genuinely curious or who knows the right questions, knows what he doesn't know. That's the guy who's important because he can ask the right questions and he can find out about things that maybe no one else is even asking about. You know, I think that is a big way to go. So I've seen a lot of people on social media asking like, where do I tell my kid to go to school now? Because it seems like everything is up for disruption. And it is. But just in general, I think the idea of being curious and being able to use it as a tool for learning rather than a tool for doing your work for you
Yeah.
is the key. I mean, if you know, I know plenty of people who use AI to write all their emails. Like, yeah, it makes your job a little easier, but you're not using it the right way. The right way should be, hey, I read this in a book, but I thought maybe this, and then kind of maybe have a debate with it or something. You know, try to expand your mind rather than let it do all the work for you.
Because yeah, we've talked about education a lot on here as well. But 4 years ago, maybe not four, it might have been less than that. A few years back when, ChatGPT was just coming out and it was just like becoming like pretty good, you could use it to basically graduate college without thinking at all, right? That is not how we would want AI to be used in education, obviously. We talked about how education is going to have to be reformed at some time soon. I see a lot of things on TikTok about how I don't know kids are almost becoming illiterate, and is that not that's crazy that somehow kids are becoming dumber with this incredible technology because we haven't figured out how to maybe not even morally, just even efficiently use it to educate kids.
Yeah, and I think that this is my own theory too, not backed by any evidence, but I think that it might be that the bell curve is shrinking vertically and expanding horizontally, where you're going to have some of the dumbest people ever and some of the smartest people ever because it all really comes down to how you use the tool. So, you know, like it used to be like, you know, 95% of people were in the middle. And then you got 2% of people that are really, really smart and 2 or 3% of people that are really, really dumb. Well, that's going to expand. So now you've got 10% of people that are really, really smart, 10% of people that are really, really dumb. And it's that middle that shrinks. I think that is probably where we're going because someone can use it to do all their homework for them so they never have to learn anything, or someone can use it to ask questions about, well, why is that? You know, I can
Mm.
finish my homework and then say, well, that's the answer, but why is it the answer? And then you can understand it on a deeper level. So I think it really comes down to the user, which is one of the reasons I like it. It is kind of crazy because it is all one big machine. Why is AI really good at writing and art? You know, I saw the one news article that said, it was like an op-ed, and it said, "I really wanted robots to do my dishes and my laundry, so I can
Yeah.
spend more time writing and doing art." And now the robots are writing and doing art, and I'm spending all my time doing my dishes and laundry. So what happened here? So what happened here is that the robots learn on what they are taught. And so what is it that is taught to them? It's what people post on the internet. What do people post on the internet? Not themselves doing their laundry. They post their art and they post their music and they post their writing. And so that's how it learns how to write and and make images and make music. And so that makes perfect sense to me as a first step. When it comes to the actual real world, when it comes to 3D spatial data, we talked a little bit about this when, they're developing the robots and they're using different methods to gain spatial data. Well, let's even go beyond that, beyond 3D. Let's look at, how the entire world comes together. If it was one machine, it's all about data. And so what is the key we basically as humans, we act as the sensors. We are the sensors to this one big machine. And so what I'm going into here is that I think the best tool when it comes to developing this machine and gathering this uh, accumulation of all of our human knowledge are prediction markets, because anyone can say anything and they can lie and they can make up shit. They could have an agenda. It could be propaganda. They could just be idiots and they can post it on the internet. And there's no way to put a weight to it for the AI. I don't know if this guy's right or this guy's right. But now, all of a sudden, we have these mechanisms where, well, that guy put $2 million on it and that guy just said it on Twitter for free. So I can put a larger weight on this guy who put $2 million on it. What I'm referring to here is prediction markets. And that's why I'm a fan of them. But
Yeah. Good segue into, we're going to talk about this on the last one. News article some people may have seen pop up recently was CNN has partnered with Kalshi, I believe. They're now going to start showing, maybe not soon, I don't know when exactly this is supposed to come into effect, but they're going to start showing live odds on like news stories that they're covering, right? So they're going over election predictions, right? Like, I think this guy's winning this district versus this person. Maybe at the bottom ticker, it'll show you like minus 146 on JB Pritzker to win the nomination or whatever, right? I did already see when you said you were going to be taking the pro stance on it. I already saw where that was going. It's going to be much harder for CNN to say something that's pretty blatantly false if at the bottom the Kalshi markets are up there and it shows a completely different story of what people are actually wagering real money on versus what these pundits are saying to you, right?
yes, and a lot of people look at it as gambling on the world, and everyone looks at gambling addiction and all this. And these are legitimate problems. I agree. We've talked about gambling, but I don't really look at this so much as like just feeding into the gambling addiction as much as many people think it is. We talked with Big Time Tommy about who moves the lines. It's not the average addicted gambler like me who's throwing a couple $100 down on a weekend. It's the big shark, the guy who's throwing millions down, who actually knows what he's talking about. And on sports gambling apps, like we talked about with Tommy, they restrict those guys. They don't want those guys betting because those guys are going to take all their money. These apps are not going to restrict them because their purpose is not to take a rake as like a normal Vegas bookie would. Their
These are
purpose is to
these are
have an edge on the news and to have an edge on it's their purpose is to provide a weight to the algorithm as to what is true and what is false. And that algorithm applies to humans. I can read it and I can see it, or the AI can read it and see that, well, CNN reported that this is true, but a lot of the sharks have millions of dollars on the fact that the opposite is true. And so what are the AI going to report back is more likely? Well, the people that have the money on it have a higher weight in the equation. It's like y equals mx plus b. The amount of money bet on one side is the m. You know,
Mhm.
so that's what I think it is. I think it's a math game to try to advance the AI and to advance what I think is a good goal, which is like the the quest for truth.
the So one thing I wanted to bring up, one difference between Kelshi or Polymarket is it's peer-to-peer betting, correct?
So Polymarket is, and I'm not sure exactly how Kalshi works. So
So
Polymarket is
Polymarket
run
is
on a
better
blockchain.
in every way.
Polymarket seems to be better, except for that it's currently not approved in America, in the United States of America, so we can't use it here. Well, we can't use it here unless we have a VPN.
Right.
And
So
let me throw this in here too. Sorry. For anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about here, I've got it pulled up. Um, so when we're talking about prediction markets, just to kind of clarify, what we're talking about is basically your gambling sports books, DraftKings, FanDuel, where people bet on games, except you can bet on real life. So you can, here's the geopolitics section. And so we can bet here. Let's take a look at this one, first one here. US and Venezuela military engagement by, and you have dates of when do you think that we're going to get into a military engagement with Venezuela. And you can see what the odds say. I'm going to try to pull up a chart a lot of them have charts that are nice. Yeah, so you can see how the sentiment changes over time. This one is Russia and Ukraine ceasefire in 2025. So as we approach the close of 2025 here, we can see that the chances of that happening go down. But this accurately predicted the presidential election of Donald Trump more so than the polls did. And there's been a few of those where these prediction markets tend to be more accurate than what the polls say or what the news says.
Yeah. So again, this Polymarket is a peer-to-peer betting system, meaning you think one way, someone else thinks the other way. I heard one quote from them. I forget if this was Polymarket or Kalshi, probably Polymarket. They seem to be more forward thinking, or I don't know, just at least ahead of the curve at this point. They want to monetize every difference of opinion. They said that that is their goal, essentially. And you hear that, and it sounds kind of scary. It sounds like, another all seeing eye, sort of. But this being peer to peer rather than you versus the book, you versus the entire system, essentially, again, kind of makes it a little bit more democratic, a little bit more decentralized, wherein these guys aren't, they don't care either way what it happens. At least Polymarket doesn't. Um, that being said, it seems, I don't know, I was gonna say it seems like it could be a very poor alignment of incentives to have CNN, matched up with Kalshi, where CNN can then report on it one way and bet on it the other way, sort of deal. But I mean, I guess that's kind of what they currently do, anyways.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I mean, it's always peer to peer in a way because they take the rake in the middle. So if a bunch of people are betting on one side, whether it's Kalshi or Polymarket or whoever, or FanDuel, or they're always going to then just change the lines to make it more attractive for other people to bet on the other side to try to get that middle where no matter who wins, they make money. That's
Mm-hmm.
always the goal. But at the same time, I agree that they should not be able to use a weapon that is the mainstream media. I mean, realistically, who's watching CNN? I mean, I think CNN is out, but it is in principle it's scary because maybe they sign a Joe Rogan or someone who's very popular to kind of push a narrative out there. Uh, I don't know if I necessarily like that either. I think I'm on your side on that. I'm not a fan of that. There should not be any. There should be a separation there between people who are supposed to be have journalistic integrity versus these people who are supposed to also be running an unbiased book that's peer to peer.
But then also if you can like bet on anything in this aspect, it's like, all right, will the House of Representatives pass like this bill or whatever? Can the House of Representatives members not be like, oh, that's definitely passing? Like, let's take some action on this. I mean, and
Yeah, that's
that's about
another.
that's
Yeah, that's
about corruption at the highest level. I get it, but if you can really
that's what
go
they do on the stocks. That's what they do on the stocks too.
again, and then that's why when I was saying, "Oh, it sounds bad," seeing on Kelsey teamed up, you can report it one way, bet the other way. I'm like, well, isn't that literally what they do already? Because Nancy Pelosi is the greatest goddamn stock trader of all time.
Hmm. And that really it's what it comes down to is like, okay, yeah, so that should be illegal. Everyone agrees on that, and it comes down to an enforcement mechanism. Because
Yeah.
like I mean, and we're seeing it in sports too. I mean, you see it in sports. There's been these sports gambling busts all the time here, where like all of a sudden the game has changed because now the players obviously, yeah, oh well, you're not allowed to bet on your own games. You're not allowed to gamble on sports because you're in the MLB. Like okay, but my buddy can gamble on it and I can front him the money. Who's stopping the politicians from doing that? That's a whole nother problem.
Who's
And I
stopping
agree that.
the who's stopping the politician's cousin's buddy from doing it? Like, right?
Hmm.
Like 3 degrees of separation where it's damn hard to link it back to whoever tipped you off.
Yeah, and I'll take the same stance that I do on this. I mean, like, let's take a look at, just to call it a little hypocrisy here, let's take a look at the Republican stance on why we need to shut the borders and deport all of these people. And it's not because every single one of them is bad. It's because, well, we don't know who the bad ones are. So if there's even a few bad ones, we got to make sure that we get rid of everybody because we can't risk that. That's a security risk. I would argue the same on this. I would say, sure, 99% of what the result of this is good. It's regular people or sharks or people who know what they're talking about gambling on something because they are geopolitical analysts and they think they know what's going on and they can beat the news, which anyone can beat the news. The news is very easy to read. But a small percentage of these people might be corrupt individuals who are trying to benefit themselves when they have their thumb on the levers of power. And even if there's a small percentage of them who are doing that, we should probably stop it all. I'm not saying we should stop it all. I'm saying we need to make one decision or the other. We need to either figure out a mechanism to make sure that doesn't happen, or until then, this should not be publicly available. I think I would take that stance.
Here's a interesting deeper dive into the philosophy of it. You said everyone agrees that that sort of corruption is wrong, right? You said there's 1% of people who have their thumbs on the levers of power who may then use the tool for their own gain. Is the average shark not trying to use this tool for his own gain? He has all the information. He has all the information. He is trying to levy his information to his own gain. The 1% who has his thumb on the lever of power is trying to levy this information to his own gain, and then he does it to his own gain. The real issue being no one should have their thumbs on the positions of power. That's what it seems like, right?
Well, I mean,
it's only wrong to seek your own personal gain if you are a person in position of power.
Well, I think no. I don't think it's ever wrong to seek your own gain. I think what's wrong is that we entrust people in positions of power who are obviously going to seek their own gain. I think that's the problem. Whereas, like, the entire U.S. Constitution was built on the idea that there is no one person in position of power, and that's been degraded to a level where now there is, because obviously, as genius as our founding fathers were, they wouldn't have envisioned the world that we live in now. And so now there's ways to get around those checks and balances that they put in. But I do think there's a big difference between someone like, say, Jeff Bezos, as I use as my normal billionaire example, someone like Jeff Bezos betting on a political bill passing compared to someone in Congress betting on a political bill passing, for two reasons. One is Jeff Bezos makes millions of dollars a day. He has no reason to do that. And also, he's not the one deciding. Now, this is theoretical. We've talked about Citizens United and all this. He might be the one deciding. But if he's not, then it's a different game.
Let me cut in right there, though. Jeff Bezos, the senator who you say it's bad for him to be betting on it because he has a say in it, the one senator has one vote. Jeff Bezos, with all his money, can get 51 votes.
Yeah, but I guess Jeff Bezos is a bad example, I guess, because he's got so many billions of dollars where if it were to be worth it for him to bet his money on this, it would be that doesn't make any sense, because he would swing the line. I mean, he would make $1 billion not betting on this. So why would he bet on this? He would have to bet more than $1 billion. If he did that, it doesn't make any sense. Like, kind of the way the algorithm works, which is the book always takes something. He'd be giving away his money for free, someone that powerful. But someone who's in Congress who actually only gets paid $150,000, $200,000 a year, 400 maybe, even if they're the president, they can do that and not swing the line because they have inside info. So it's not so much about, like Elon Musk can put 100 billion on one line if he wants, because he knows that this is going to happen. But there's a big difference between that and someone who doesn't actually have that power to swing the line, but just has inside info and is insider trading, basically. If I'm the owner of a company, then I'm making bets every day on what's going to work. If I'm the owner of Amazon, if I'm Jeff Bezos, he's gambling every day on whether or not I should spend my money here or here, what's going to have the biggest payoff. That's his gamble every day. But if I'm Nancy Pelosi and I'm not taking any gambles, I'm going to make $150,000 a year no matter what I do, but I'm going to act, rather than act in the interest of Americans. I'm going to act in the interest of this billionaire who promises me $1 million. Well, now that's corruption.
And that's the system we have right now.
And that is, yes, yeah, and we agree on that. And but
Yeah.
that's the difference between when we say like the thumb on the lever of power. I mean, to somebody like Jeff Bezos, this ain't the lever of power. I guess is what I'm saying. This is chump change.
The immoral part of it is having your thumb on the lever of power. That was my point. It's not betting on the action. It's just the fact that you have your thumb on the lever of power.
Well, I'll put it. You have your ear on the lever of power. So I think the ideal situation is that no single person has their thumb on the lever of power. I agree. That's what democracy is all about. It's not up to one person. It's up to everybody. But the way we see it now is that it's like Nancy Pelosi herself can't pass whatever bill helps her stocks. But what she can do is socialize with everyone else who's also got a say and figure out what's going to happen and then bet on it before it happens. And so I mean, yes, I'm agreeing in a way, but I would almost say like I would say that problem you're describing, the Constitution and the way we have our government set up attempted to solve, and they did solve temporarily, but now because of the way the world's evolved, it's no longer working because everyone communicates so much. I feel like we communicate so much more where somebody like a Nancy Pelosi can easily just kind of, she's on a first-hand basis with everyone else who has their thumb on the lever, and so she could, doesn't matter what she does, she's worried about what everyone else is doing too.
That's like all of them too, though. Almost every single one of those politicians gets into office not a multimillionaire, and almost all of them leave a millionaire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, could that be the issue? Is that it's not like there's a single thing we can attribute, like that's where we went wrong, that's where we went wrong. Could it be just that the evolution of technology has kind of made our system obsolete because it was designed where the people, back in the day, 1776,
is seemingly obsolete now. It really does seem like
it
that.
is.
It now seems corrupt to the core. What percentage of people, Americans, like trust the government? It's less than 50 now, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the idea of the representative government that we have was designed so that each district would have a representative, meaning like, so we're in Illinois. So like we'd have an Illinois representative. The idea was that that representative has a more important or more significant or bigger communication circle within Illinois, within the residents of Illinois. And so we're sending him to Washington to represent us because he doesn't know those people. He's representing us. He knows us. That's not a thing now.
Right.
Because
now
of our technology.
He knows them.
Now he knows them. He doesn't know us.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the issue, isn't it?
And add on top of that, how much of it is, let's take it one step further. Even if you're the president of the United States, are you obligated to serve the people of your country, or are you obligated to serve the other groups of foreign leaders who have all formed their own little bit of a bureau or a little bit of a government themselves on a global level? Who, you know what I mean? Who does Donald Trump know better? Bibi Netanyahu or Vladimir Putin, or even some of the highest elites of our country?
I was gonna say the 13th representative from Texas. Right.
Yeah, like, who is never heard of, or who is he more aligned with? That guy, or is he more aligned with the whatever, the president of Turkey or whoever those are the guys making deals. And so that's kind of the anti-globalism thing. Like globalism and national sovereignty can't exist in the same thing. And I would almost argue that we've seen that in the United States on a micro level, whereas like federalism and state sovereignty can't exist. We don't really have state sovereignty, where our entire Constitution was designed based on state sovereignty, and we don't even have that because it doesn't make any sense. I mean, what's going on in your district? What's the last law passed in your county?
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, right. Exactly.
You have no idea. Nobody has no idea because it's the federal government that runs everything. So that's kind of over, and that goes to
Like
our earlier point, which is that it's going to
the
keep
laws
getting
can
more
be
and more.
the laws can be a little bit different state to state, but you still have to obey federal law, right? Like federal law is by far and away above state law, and yeah, it does seem like it's going towards globalism, doesn't it? It has to be.
Yeah, I think it definitely is. I mean, that's a good question too. Is when it comes to like the way our government's set up, it's an interesting one too because so obviously the entire government was set up like when you look at the Bill of Rights, it was set up in a way where it was supposed to be like protecting the states against the federal government. So the federal government, like if you look at the Bill of Rights, it's not you have the right to free speech. It's you shall not infringe upon the right to free speech. So it is talking to the federal government. It's not talking to the people. It's talking to the federal government. It's from the people to the federal government. And so then it leads it down to the state. So really that contract is not with us as people at all. It's between the states and the government, the states and the federal government, I should say. And that is kind of a thing that's come up a lot lately, which is like what should be left to the states and what should be left to the federal government. It used to be like cultural things that were like local, but kind of the same idea, which is that there is no local anymore. Everyone is online. There's no such thing as like we have this local community that all thinks the same. Your neighbor probably thinks much different than you. So that locality is kind of leaving. So it's almost like the states are becoming nothing.
States are becoming more and more obsolete as nation states are seemingly becoming more and more obsolete, right?
Yeah, it seems like it. I mean, I don't know if we have one though. I think we might have two forever. Two
Two.
global governments. Because there always needs to be there's always a Coke and a Pepsi and an Xbox and a PlayStation, you know?
I had this thought a while back. What if there's like a great schism of sorts? Essentially, like we draw a line down like somewhere, all right, or just call it like by continent, right? All right, North and South America and Africa is going to be this way, Europe, Asia, and Australia is going to be this way. And what if it's just like, all right, one side's going to be, like like basically like a communist government, like a communal living, communal effort sort of deal, and then the other one can be like free markets. And let's see what happens in 100 years from now.
I like that idea. I think I would
You
be
can
down
you
with
can
that.
move where you want, if you want to just be provided for and chill out and like have like a decent standard of living. You can move to the communist part of the world if you want to, try your luck at, your rugged individualism and things like that. You can try this part of the world.
Yeah, I mean, no, I think that makes perfect sense because I've actually kind of thought along those lines before, which is like, like California wants it one way, Texas wants it another way. Like, why don't the privilege we have is we can move state to state, and so it's like we saw it during COVID, everyone left California, went to Texas, and then during the shit that's going on, with ice and all that, everyone's like, oh, we're gonna go back to California. It's like that's good, that should be how it is, if you should be able to do what you want to do, and there should be an option for you in each. And the best part about that is that if your option truly doesn't work for a society, then it will be no more eventually.
Yeah, right. It's like, all right, you go to the one, and maybe you go to the rugged individualism side, and there's almost anarchy. There's no big federal government to protect you, and maybe people start taking advantage of each other. It's like, all right, fuck this, I'm going over there. Then maybe conversely, well, you join the like a big federalism ideal, right? Like the big unitarian government sort of idea, and maybe they start repressing human rights and they start controlling things. So then, fuck it, I don't want to be a part of this. Let me go over to the individual side, right?
Yeah, and that also kind of adds to another point too, which is that there might not be a right or wrong. It might come down to the individual, where like there might be some people who do tend to thrive and do better in that more libertarian anarchy state where the government is less involved and you're open to competition, and that's how they do well. And then you might also have communities that don't really like that, but as a community, they do well when they know that they have kind of a safety net by the government that's going to make sure that no one does that. And there might not be necessarily like a right and wrong. There might be
Right. They could both
if
work.
people are free to choose, if people are free to choose which system best aligns with them, then maybe they all kind of end up self organizing into
Yeah.
like whatever fits, and then we have a better world than ever. So I'm a big fan of that idea.
Kind of
Actually,
sounds like we just solved society.
yeah. Why don't we just do that?
Takes a whole huge global effort, which is why, that Marxist utopia of no one has to work anymore and we have robots doing everything for us might not ever happen, because how do you get cooperation on that level? Unless, the AI technology becomes so good, we all like mind meld with some sort of like neural link in our heads, right?
Yeah, I mean the thing about it is that it's just difficult to do without coercion. Like the
Yeah.
one of my main things that I'm always big on capitalism about is that like there is no coercion. Like you don't like here's what if I'm the big Amazon Jeff Bezos guy, it's like here's what I'm willing to pay you, but the difference between that and the other systems is that I can't point a gun to your head and say you have to work. So it's like everyone will say, "Well, I do have to work because it's the only way I can survive." It's like, but you don't have to work here. There's other options, and there should always be multiple options, and people should always be competing. That's theoretically the good part. Now, it doesn't always play that way in practice. But on the opposite side, it's like, yes, people might end up being more equal, but also the reason they're more equal is because of coercion, which I'm not a fan of. But who am I to judge? Kind of going back, which is like, well, who am I to say? Some people might not mind the coercion and they'd rather just live in a society where everyone's equal and they don't got to deal with like a billionaire stomping on them all the time. And it's like, all right, well then I'm not going to stop you from doing that. I just don't want to do that.
Yeah. Freedom of choice either way. I think call it there. Sounds like we fixed
Yeah.
society. Sounds like we
Yeah. I think we might as well. I mean, we've got it solved.
All right. Thanks for tuning in,
All
everyone.
it
Maybe
took, all it took was one Christmas special and, all these problems went away.
sounds like it. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks for tuning in.